Unstuck with Misfits Unplugged, the podcast that celebrates the journey of career rebels who have overcome challenges, blazed their own paths, and came out of the other side winning. Today, we're featuring Rita-Soledad Fernández Paulino, who is a queer Mexican-American former math teacher turned money and self-care coach. After years of dealing with various autoimmune health issues, PTSD, and ADHD, Soledad learned to use money as a tool to support their wellness and is now committed to teaching other progressive BIPOC, for anyone who doesn't know what that means, Black, Indigenous, and people of color, women, and the LGBTQ plus community how to do the same. Soledad believes your wealth is essential to the collective and wants to see you both wealthy and wealthy. So welcome and thank you for joining us today, Soledad.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're going to jump right in so we can get all of your insight, your story. So I think first, let's start with how did you go from math teacher to thriving financial coach and educator?
Poco poco. In 2019, I got sick and was placed on disability and medical leave, and I had to live on disability checks. At that same time, my husband was shutting down his company. So we had 2 kids, and the only reliable income was disability checks. So it was the first time where I had to budget. Prior to that, I'd been working since I was 13 years old. I had always had more than enough money to cover my expenses. And now I was in a position where I wasn't sure how I was going to be paying my monthly expenses. So that's when I started reading personal finance books to learn how to create a budget. And that led to us learning how to create a budget. We learned to live off of one income. Then we increased our incomes. And I was like, let's pay off our student loan debt. And let's see if we could save a 6-month emergency fund. And let's see if we could max out our retirement accounts. And let's see if we could retire early. And so one thing just led to another. And as I shared my journey online, because I was looking for a community of people who would talk dinero, people started coming to me saying, hey, can you do a speaking engagement? Hey, can you coach me? Can you show me? And then eventually by 2021, the end of 2021, I decided this is going to be my full-time business.
That's an amazing story. I mean, for people who aren't in the finance world, like we were saying, that Isabel and I are in the insurance finance world. And so we understand the debilitating, part of, not having enough insurance, being underinsured, having to figure out budgets and estate planning for people of color. That's huge. It's amazing that you went into that.
Not to talk about student loans, because I just got my Aid Advantage bill and I'm like, okay, so I guess my kid isn't going to preschool. Let's just take her out of there and let's
just homeschool. Forget about it. Crazy. Well, so I have a quick question, and then it sort of piggybacks off of what Isabel was asking about, because you mentioned that you came out of being a math teacher. So one of the things we always find interesting is what are the little breadcrumbs about your personality, about who you are, that helps you transfer some of that into what you're doing as a passion?
Honestly, I think what really helped me was my ADHD. Right. So, and it's not so much my personality, but my neurodivergency really served me, right? Because part of having ADHD is that you can be impulsive, right? You could just you're not so quick to question everything, right? For me, it was it made complete sense that I paid off my student loan debt and I was scared of how I was going to save $30,000, and I was scared of how I was going to save $30,000. And I thought, well, you know what? I'll lean into a community, and because no one in my family, nobody in my circle talks dinero, I'll just talk dinero to strangers online. That made 100% sense to me, right? I was like, I'll just talk dinero online, public, and I'm going to create my community of people who are going to cheer me on, who are going to share tips that I'm going to get to learn from, and eventually that I'll also get to teach. And so I think that really served me. I think being a natural teacher, someone, if I learn something, I want everyone else to learn it as well, really served me. And so it made sense that I would go on Instagram and that I could create posts and So people would ask me like, how do you create so much content? And I was like, I was a teacher teaching multiple subjects where I had to create multiple lessons, multiple class worksheets, homework sheets on the daily, creating everything from scratch. So creating one little post on Instagram a day, that felt like easy peasy.
I find that so interesting because I watch a lot of podcasts, and what I learned is that people who have really successful e-course classes and stuff were all like formal teachers, like former teachers. And it's like you have the advantage because you know how to put together like an entire school plan. It's crazy.
So
That's
what
awesome.
challenges did you overcome going from a 9 to 5 structured schedule, paycheck there at the end of 2 weeks, to being an entrepreneur? If someone's listening to us and they have these aspirations, or our teachers that want a side hustle in something that they're passionate about, how did you make that pivot?
My biggest challenge was letting go of the identity of being the breadwinner. So in my relationship, I had always been the one who made the most money. Very, very early on, you know, I supported my husband while when we first started dating, he was making $10 an hour. I was being paid $86,000 a year as a teacher in New York City. And I was like, go back to school, figure out what you got to do. I'll pay for everything. I took care of our apartment. I took care of our vacations, and he was working and having to send his money back to his mother. And I was like, look, I got you. I'll take care of you. And so that had been our dynamic for the relationship, where I was very comfortable in that role. Also, you know, being raised by a single mother, I was somebody who at the age of 13 started working. In college, I was paying my mom's mortgage when she got sick. Like, I knew how to provide for people. And when I started my business, money is not coming in consistently, right? And part of what I had some savings, and I had this idea of like how long I can go without contributing financially to the family. And when that amount of money went away, I had to let go of this attachment to being the breadwinner, and also explore what it's like to be taken care of financially, which is something I never really felt I had. And by being able to lean on my partner, and I mean, this was something I struggled with. It led to, you know, my business coach coaching me on this, my personal therapist coaching me on this, couples therapist. Like, we really, really had to work on this because it was very hard. It was very hard for me to release that, you know, kind of sense of control that I had being the breadwinner, or safety that I felt with having certain money. But as soon as I leaned into that, I'm telling you, I started having $10,000 months. Wow.
That's awesome. I'm curious. I mean, obviously, because you're coaching people on money and all that stuff, how much of this is you coaching through just mindset? Because I have to imagine, I mean, I know I can only talk from an African-American woman's standpoint, right? Where, you know, we out-educated our male counterparts by a huge amount. And so you find a lot of Black women and women of color who are going into, you know, executive leadership and all this good stuff and making 6 figures. And like you said, all of a sudden, by kind of default, becoming the head of household. And then that same drive that you have wanting to go into entrepreneurship throws you in there, but then you have to juggle exactly what you're talking about. And that's a huge mind shift. So I'm just curious, like, how much of your coaching goes into mindset? Because we talk about that a lot, about how what we think about ourselves becomes what we call destroyers, things that, like, you know, keep us from moving to the next level.
Oh, mindset is 80% of the game, right? Like, ultimately, the skill of opening up a high yield savings account, you can learn that quick. Learning how to invest in the stock market, that's quick. Opening up a Roth IRA, that's quick. Unpacking your money wounds, unpacking your beliefs, developing new beliefs about yourself, about your relationships, about who you are as a person. Well, that should take years.
I hope that your package shortens that.
Yeah. So I was right along with Brandy. So she went into mental health. I was going to go into self-care, since that's another aspect of your business and what your strengths are, because like you mentioned, you're juggling a lot when you were head of household, and then the shift and the children. And I'm sure the children have a lot of things that you have to manage. How does the self-care, and how do you, well, I guess there's multiple parts. Like, how do you prioritize self-care? And then from a financial perspective, if someone's listening to this, a lot of times that gets prioritized, and health, at the very, very end of the priority to-do list, bucket list. It doesn't make it to the list. So how is that intertwined into your coaching?
Yeah, so what I tell people is the overwhelmed, overstimulated, exhausted brain cannot engage in financial planning. So you either decide to nurture your wellness and make it a priority, or understand that you're going to plateau. There's going to be only as far as you can go. So in entrepreneurship, when I wasn't engaging in diverse self-care, $44,000. That's the most my business could make. I had to expand my self-care in order to hit six figures, to then move on to multiple six figures. I had to grow as a person. I had to learn new ways to nurture myself and take care of myself. And it was hard. I mean, now I'm somebody who says diverse self-care intentions, and diverse is my acronym for the 7 types of self-care. The D stands for the nettle self-care, I, interpersonal self-care, V, vocational self-care, E, emotional self-care, R, restorative body self-care, S, spiritual self-care, and E, environmental self-care. I am somebody who neglected self-care. I grew up being told self-care is selfish. When I became a mother, I couldn't even go to the gym without feeling so much guilt. It was so hard. But now I set my diverse self-care intentions. I track that I'm engaging in them on a daily basis. Obviously, like, I don't get to do all 7 in one day, but I have found for myself that as long as I get to 4 out of the 7, that I stay in my zone of resilience. And that took a lot. I mean, I remember the day that I was like, okay, I need some help around here when it comes to environmental self-care. I'm not going to be the only one cleaning the bathrooms. And at that time, we were living, my brother and my husband and I were all together, plus the kids. And I told them, I'm only cleaning the bathrooms 2 times a month. You guys have to also help. And just setting that boundary with them and advocating for myself in that way felt very challenging. Because I was definitely raised like, you're supposed to be able to do it all. You're supposed to be able to bring in the money, take care of the kids, clean the house, and have sex. Like, all the time.
You're speaking our language.
Check.
Yeah. You're talking to our spirits.
So I was like, advocating for me to get help with cleaning the house felt like, oh, I'm losing. I'm not enough. I'm inadequate. I'm inferior. But I was like, fuck it then. I'll be inferior. I'll be inadequate. If it means that I get to build my business and help Black, Indigenous people of color, women, and LGBTQ folk self-care themselves to financial independence, I can increase my capacity to feel those feelings. So the day comes when it's supposed to be my brother's turn to clean the bathroom. And someone knocks on my door and he's like, hi, I'm here to clean your house. And I was like, who are you? And he was like, your brother hired me. I'm a housekeeper. And then, so this guy comes, cleans the house. And then my husband is like, oh, can you come back in 2 weeks? That's when it's my turn. I saw them so quickly pay someone else to do the jobs that they didn't want to do. Their energy, protecting their energy was so valuable to them. Protecting their time was so valuable to them that they said, I'll pay someone else to do that. And I would then clean the bathrooms, and I was all resentful, and I was like, oh, must be nice. And then I realized, like, so you have a choice. Why don't you decide that your time and your energy is just as valuable? Why aren't you using your money as a tool to support your wellness? So that was like my first kind of big jump into, I'm going to use money as a way to support my wellness.
I find that so interesting. You bring up a really good point about how quickly men are wired to get their needs met in that way. I mean, probably across the board, but just in general, and how sacrificial the woman mindset is in terms of how we approach life and chores and money and all that good stuff. So you set a good precedence with that as far as boundaries. The next question that I have is specific to, because I have to imagine with all of the acronyms that you just went through, that there's a lot of organizing people and getting people to organize themselves in terms of goal setting. So I'm curious to know what your philosophy is around goal setting.
When I'm working with clients one-on-one, no, I even think just in regular goal setting. I mean, remember, I have ADHD, right? So like one of my superpowers is if I'm interested in doing something, I just do it.
Mm-hmm.
That's like the superpower part of having ADHD, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think when it comes to goal setting, it's really about reflecting on for yourself, how do you want to grow? And are you willing to stick with all the emotions that are going to come up when you are out of your comfort zone so that you can grow? I think about like anyone can achieve any goal, but can everybody sit with the emotions, the embarrassment, the inferiority, the anger, the shame? Can you increase your capacity to feel all those feelings so that you don't quit, so that you stay, you stay in the game of growth?
I like that.
One of the other things that have been burning on me since I introduced you in the beginning is reflecting on the financial service industry. And Brandy and I talk about this all the time because no one looks like us, right? No one looked like us when we started 20 years ago, and the percentages have gone up, but in single digits. So Wealth para Todo, how have you kind of broken the mold to be a financial coach in white male dominated marketplace?
I don't think about it. I just don't
That's a
think
good
about it.
answer.
I'm so committed to making sure to find my people, to showing up, doing interviews with podcasts like yourselves, connecting with people who I know are going to resonate with my story, who are going to feel represented and seen by me.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. I'm focused on serving my people, and my people, we find each other and we grow
Mm-hmm.
together.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the positivity of being an entrepreneur. You're finding your community and helping the folks that are gravitating to you. We're in corporate, so we're surrounded by one type of individual versus being able to break the mold and being an entrepreneur. And that's why we went into entrepreneurship.
And I salute you. I salute you
Mhm.
for that, because I know that even in conferences, right, where there's certain professional developments or networking events, right, I find myself, I'm not willing to be in spaces where I'm tolerated. I need to be celebrated. And unfortunately, that's still not the case for a lot of Black and Indigenous people of color and queer people.
Mhm.
It's just not the case. So I create my own little bubble, my own little space, on the internet and on social media, so that I know that I can block anyone who's not part of the celebrate me party.
So I know that you are Latina and queer, and I'm not sure where you fall in that space, but I'm interested to know if there are different financial challenges from, your LGBTQ plus community opposed to your people of color, sort of, because sometimes I feel like in finance, when I hear because I listen to a lot of podcasts and there's like a renaissance going on right now in almost every culture, right? And so I'm curious to know I'm assuming that your coaching is not one size fits all, but to our listeners, are there specific challenges that you're seeing as a pattern opposed to some of your other genres?
For sure. I mean, we see this with healthcare, right? Your medical expenses can really impact your financial situation. Your ability to get health coverage at an affordable price and quality health coverage is key to your financial security. So if you are a woman living in a state where abortion isn't approved, that's going to impact you. That's going to impact your financial trajectory. If you are trans living in a state that doesn't have affirmative trans healthcare, that's going to impact your mental state, which then also impacts your ability to consistently make income and also your healthcare. I personally, I live in Los Angeles. My husband is a Black Dominican American, and I have an 8-year-old trans child. And LA is expensive, very, very expensive. And so I feel I have no choice but to increase my income and develop my skills to like really, really increase my income, because I'm not moving to Texas, even though it's cheaper, because they're really mean to trans kids there. I'm not
Mhm.
moving to these other states that are cheaper, more affordable, where I could buy a
Mhm.
house cash right now, literally, because it's not going to be a safe place for myself or for my children.
Mm. That's good insight.
I just got off of a call about adoption awareness, and they talked about the difference of availability for people. Like everyone should have the opportunity to have a family, but just the limitations in that space. And it's just, it's across so many different industries that we just don't even have at the forefront of my mind. You know, I think adoption, I don't think that there's limitations if you're a queer couple versus if you're a single woman or if you're, you know, heterosexual relationship. So it's very interesting to hear from people things that they have to think about, because we all have different struggles and different things that we carry around. So thank you for sharing that. Another thing that we talked about was your growth from the beginning to where you are today. So if you were to go back and say, Soledad, in the beginning of your career journey, like what advice or words of wisdom would you share with yourself?
Which part of my career journey? When I was a teacher or when I became an entrepreneur?
I guess that whichever you prefer. I think that maybe at the beginning of your entrepreneur journey, I think that was a big pivot. So maybe what would you share to that person who was taking the leap, even though it's a joyous leap for you? What would be that advice that you would have given yourself going into the deep end of the pool?
I really struggled with owning my identity as an entrepreneur. So I kept saying, I'm a teacher, I'm a teacher, I'm a teacher, I'm a teacher, forgetting how when I was in college, I was buying 25-cent tacos at a restaurant and then selling them on campus for $1.50. Like that gives entrepreneurship, right? You know, forgetting how I would make these little bags for Christmas with Mexican candies and sell them for $20. And I was only paying, you know, $5 per each bag, and I would sell them. You know, that's giving entrepreneurship. How I started my own babysitting job at one point, my own tutoring job at one point. Like I was doing that. And yet, when I was an adult with kids, I was like, I'm a teacher. I really forgot. I forgot who I was. And I think that's something that's so important. Like when you're stepping into what might feel like something unfamiliar, it probably isn't that unfamiliar. Your heart has probably already called for that. And
Mhm.
if your heart is like thinking about it and your brain is thinking about it, it's probably because you've had some lived experiences that have already nurtured that. And
Mhm.
so the one thing I would tell myself is like, remember who you are. Remember who you are.
I love that. That goes kind of back to the question I was asking about the breadcrumbs, about your life and your personality that kind of transitions into this space. It is the entrepreneurship. When you go back, we always ask our clients like to think back to when you were 7, 8 years old, or when you were a teenager or whatever, like what was the thing that like lit you up? And so for you to be where you are now and now see that, you know, you've had the breadcrumb of entrepreneurship in you from a very young age. And I think that's important for people to know when they're looking to go into either entrepreneurship or follow some sort of passion that they have. That's awesome.
I think I just want everyone to know, like, YOLO, you only live once.
I love
Let's
it.
really stop avoiding things that we're scared of. Lean into the fear, you know, expand your capacity to feel every single emotion so that you could also expand your capacity to get all the results that you want, right? You can't expect to have growth without all the feelings. So just embrace it. Embrace that you're going to feel all the feelings. And as a result, you're going to get all the money.
We
Thank
needed to
you.
hear that.
Thank you
For
for sharing your
sure.
story and being so honest and open with all aspects
Mhm.
of your financial journey, your family. We've learned a lot and we appreciate the conversation. So thank you so much. So where can we find you? Where can our
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on here. You can find me on Instagram, on Threads, and on LinkedIn. I spend a lot of time on Instagram. You could also subscribe to my weekly email list. If you go to my website, wealthbytodos.com, you can get on that. And if you're ever looking for some financial coaching, you could also learn more about how I work with clients one-on-one and my Wealth by Todos Academy.
Yay!
Awesome.
Thank you so
Thanks so
much.
much.